Hello.
Hey, how are you?
I am good. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing very well. Doing very well.
Happy Wednesday, I believe. Let me
It's
just send up
feeling,
some love. Thank you for the love.
yeah, it's feeling more like it's feeling more like a Friday for me. I don't know what it is,
Oh,
but I'm feeling Friday-ish today.
oh, okay. Well, look at you.
Awesome, awesome. Big man,
Hey,
what's
Brandon.
going
Doing,
on?
doing, man.
I tell Stacy and you feeling like it's Friday today too.
Is that the conversation before I came?
That's what he said, Brandon. I'm like,
What?
still it's Wednesday. It's Wednesday.
Yeah, yeah. The week has been hectic. How you guys been?
It's been
It's
good. It's been good. Yes.
yeah, it's been a pretty crazy day. The week's been hectic, but I'm looking forward towards the end of the week.
Yes. Me
Yeah,
too.
yeah, yeah, for sure. So unfortunately, Rohan had an emergency,
Mm,
so he's not
Oh,
able to join us today.
okay.
okay. Okay.
But it's all good. It means more more love for Brandon.
I mean, I'm definitely sad. And I'm grateful to share stage with Stacy and yourself. Be a fruitful conversation. Regardless.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I'm sure he's taken the message that we're going to be talking about today and resting up. But no, not really. He said he had a couple unexpected deadlines he had to go knock out, so he's
Okay.
been doing that. So listen, let's get started, man. I'm so excited, to have you both. And you two have come highly recommended in a number of different circles. And with all the accolades that I kind of see, I'm not even gonna bother to try to introduce you. I'm gonna kind of leave the honors to yourself, right? But we say ladies first, so let's start with you, Stacey Ann. One of
Okay.
the 100 black women to watch in Canada. I saw that and I was
Yes.
like, kaboom, big time for sure.
Did you want me to, what do you want me to
Sure.
do? Do you want me to
Let's
do like,
just introduce yourself. Tell us a little
okay.
bit about you and why you're in the space.
Okay, well, my name is Stacey and Buchanan. For everyone that's joining here, good evening. Welcome to our live where we're going to be talking about rest and why it's important for us here in the Black community. I'm a filmmaker. I'm an actress first. That's how my journey started off in. I'm a mental health advocate and I'm a TEDx speaker. I'm honestly here on my ancestors' wildest dream, and I'm here to disrupt, and I'm here to create space where people in the Black community and everyone in my community can feel seen and feel heard and also feel safe. So my goal is to raise awareness on how mental health is perceived in the Black community, and it has graduated to decolonizing our mindset and our perspective overall. So that's me.
I love that. I love that. Big time. Big time. Um, and Brandon.
Yeah, man. So my name is Brandon Hay. I'm father of three boys. Jamaican born. I started an organization, a grassroots organization called Black Dad. This year is our 15th year. Um, I'm currently in school. I'm taking gestalt therapy, become a therapist in the next 2 years. And that was just that came from like my own need. I'm looking for a black therapist. Um, there's a lack of that in the city. So I'm grateful to be here, be in this conversation tonight.
Yeah, for sure, man. Welcome. So Brothers Who Care, we started in 2019, and with the very essence of just bringing Black men together and talking about all the things that are critical to us and important to us that we need to talk about. And one of those things is mental health. There's a stigma, as you know, in our community surrounding mental health. And our goal through these conversations, the mental health hour, is really to ignite and normalize the conversation around mental health, and to know that it's totally cool to be having this conversation. And I could tell you, man, for me, it was like definitely a big step forward to be able to sort of want to do this. And the greatest thing, Stacey, and I spoke to you separately, Brandon, I talked to you separately, and you just sort of made me feel so loved. Just about being self, because
Yeah.
you two have kind of lived it. So one of the things that I love we talked about was, what's on your mind today? How you checking in? How full is your bucket? I'm not even going to say how empty your bucket. So Stacey, and I'll start with you. How we share?
How full is my bucket today?
Yeah.
You know what? It is full, and it is full of gratitude. I just today I finished doing a live earlier today with my company BIPOC Executive Search, and we were talking about how leadership is during the pandemic, and a lot about the conversation, the discussion rather. We're talking about how it is important for leaders to listen to their employees, or rather teammates, and I'm very grateful to be in a space and to have a job and be a part of a team that everyone is seen and everyone is heard and everybody feels safe. And as a mental health advocate, you want to be in such a space. So riding off the high of today's live discussion that we have over on LinkedIn, I'm feeling really full and really grateful, and really expressing a lot of gratitude, because sometimes I'm guilty of that, to forget just the little things, to just give thanks. I may remember the next day, but it's so important to give thanks, and that's part of my daily mantra that I try to make sure that I drill, is to give thanks. So to answer the question, I'm feeling full because I'm riding off the high of a successful talk where we're talking about leadership, and a lot of that came into listening, and also the mental health of your teammates and how important that is.
Yo, I love that.
Yeah.
Gratitude, listening, showing up
Mhm.
as a leader and representing. And
Yeah.
knowing you, hearing you, I feel a positivity in your voice, and I know you're represented today. So big up on that.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
And Brandon.
Yeah, I mean, I'm grateful for that word gratitude. That like I was talking, I took off my slippers and I put my foot on the carpet, and just remind myself to breathe. You know what I'm saying? Because it's been a hectic week, and I'm grateful to do the work. You know what I'm saying? Like my day job, I work with the city of Toronto as a community officer. And one of the programs that I did, is called the Community Healing Project. So it's near the first quarter. So just getting ready for that. The role itself is a work, but it's good work. You know what I'm saying? And then this week and Sunday, we're getting ready for the first, or the first new season of Sunday dinner. Um,
Yes.
that's others. So like prepping for that, and then also in that, is that I have class tomorrow. And it's like I have sons. You know what I'm saying? And it's like trying to stay on top of these different things um, can be a lot. And in that, I went for a walk, and I did this walking meditation with that, I don't know, minute, and it was necessary to keep grounded, just to remind myself to like just something as simple right now as like my feet on the carpet, and just get grounded, present, not go all over the place, and just get into my.
Yeah.
So that's how I'm coming into the conversation. So I appreciate that opportunity to check in.
I love that. Grounded, being present, showing gratitude,
Mhm.
feeling your space and kind of what's around you. I love that. I mean, those are kind of all the things that when you think about our mental health, you think about the
Yeah.
things that we need to be appreciative of, which makes me super excited to want to kind of jump right into it and talk about rest. But, before I do that, I'll tell you how I'm checking in. I'm checking in about 95% today. And, I'm going to say
Yeah.
95% because, hey, listen, for the rest of the week, I'm not working. So that's exciting. I gotta do some work tonight, but I had like a pretty crazy morning. Took a walk today and knew that I was gonna be having this conversation. And even though it's kind of work on the side, right? And Stacey, and I
Mm-hmm.
was telling you this, man. It's like you go to bed thinking about this stuff, and you wake up thinking about this stuff because it's
Mm-hmm.
coming from a part of passion, right? So I'm
Yeah.
checking in full today, maximum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to piggyback, if possible, of what Brandon say about grounding. It's so important, and for the audience that are tuning in right now, when we're talking about mental health, it's really important that you take a moment to ground yourself because the conversations can be triggering for some. Either you're going through something, a loved one that's going through something, you're a caregiver for someone. The conversation around mental health alone can be so triggering. So I want the audience to take a moment to really ground yourself. If you're not outside, feel your feet hit the ground from your toes to your heel and take some deep breaths in. Because like I said, conversations may bring up something that you thought was locked away. So I just want to give it's not a disclaimer, but it's more of something to really guide the audience through and kind of protect you in a sense. But I just want to say that.
I love that. Love that. Hey, so today we're talking about rest and how important it is to our mental health. And when you think about rest, people just probably think about sleep. But we could probably talk about different types of rest. And I was kind of doing some research ahead of this. And so I just want to list some 7 types of rest. And,
Okay.
we'll be posting this on our Instagram. People could actually pull it down. So the 7 types of rest: time to be away, just time away, right? Um, Number 2 is the permission to not be helpful. Sometimes you're always getting these calls. Can you do this? Can you do this? Right? Sometimes, you need to be able to say, no, my plate is too full. I can't do that. Right?
Mhm.
Um, the connection with art and nature. And, Brandon, what you just talked about is like feeling the carpet, feeling fresh air, right? Um, the solitude to recharge, knowing that you need to do that, go grab a massage or something, right? A break from responsibility. I know you said you got 3 sons, and Stacey, I know you have a little one, but just sort of having that moment to step away from that for a minute. Um, Stillness to sort of just decompress. Sometimes you just really need to just decompress and kind of let it go, and then just really having some alone time. So you kind of think about rest, like these are some different types of rest that if we transcend our minds to start thinking through that, will bring a lot of wholesomeness to our lives.
Mm.
Yeah. So, so Stacey, and I want to start with you. Um, from your perspective, share with us, why is rest important to our mental health?
Rest is important to our mental health because it is definitely reparations. It is definitely reparations of our mind. And as Black people, as the Black community, we always feel the need to subscribe to this hustle culture because the terms lazy or Jamaican terms gutless has been used to shame us for so long. And so we feel like if we're not constantly productive, if we're not constantly on the go, if we're not constantly doing something, then we are not worthy. And that is so much further from the truth. And when you constantly put yourself in that mindset where you constantly have to be on the go, 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 go. Yeah, your hustle practice may equate to your financial health going like this, but your mental and emotional health is going to continue to decline. And I think if we get into a practice of first looking at rest as a gift to yourself, rest as a necessary component for you to be productive and not to look at it as like I am not doing anything. You are doing something. If a car continuously goes without ever stopping, what's going to happen to that car, right? Everybody, everything, machines, you need to take a break. So you have to look at that and say, you know what, I need to take a break. And also, when you do take a break, it's also very important. And I love that you describe the different forms of rest as well. You take it guilt free, because it's one thing to try and sit down and rest, but then thinking about everything that you have going on. And I also want to be very mindful to, you know, the audience that's watching, like, very mindful that there are some people, it's really, really difficult to take a rest period because they have so many responsibilities. But even if you're driving and if you want to park for 5 minutes, that's the rest moment. If you're taking the subway, the train, the bus, whatever it is, if you want to take some moment off to yourself to read a book, scroll on social media, whatever brings you some form of restful period, do whatever that you can to like kind of turn off the noise sometimes. And I like to also add, I recently started falling in love with this word rest because I myself was never the one to rest. I would never rest. I was team hustle. I was team telling people, well, you know, if you want to be successful, you got to get up at 5 a.m. You got to go to the gym. You got to do all of this. And it's just like, I think when the pandemic hit, you kind of realize a lot that is happening. And I don't want to take too much of the time up, but I want to say a lot of us also struggle with forms of anxiety. We seem to think that anxiety is just sweaty palms or the heart beating fast. Anxiety is the inability to slow down. If you're think about it, you're constantly on the go, you're constantly taking this job, you're constantly taking that gift, you do not have the ability to say no. You people please, you know, you feel like you have to be so loyal when it is you have poor boundaries. So those are forms of anxiety, but it's called high functioning anxiety, where you're able to still function and be deemed as a productive part of society, but your mental health and your emotional health is on the decline when things like that happen. So I want to state that before we go into anything else.
Yeah, I think we lost Brandon for a second. His connection is probably not that great. Just wait for him to rejoin. But I'm really glad you said that, and I think we've had a conversation to some extent where you've kind of identified this, what you define it as, this high functioning anxiety. Because
Yeah.
like I feel as if more time I'm just chopping, 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 going, right? And
Mm.
feel guilty when you do take the time to rest.
Yeah, and I'm like that. So I'm not telling the audience anything that I haven't been through.
Hmm.
I'm not saying anything that I haven't personally gone through. And realizing that this was really, really, really and truly affecting me, you know? But
True,
hi,
true.
Brandon. Good to have you back.
Brandon, welcome back, man. So, you want to take it up, Brandon, to talk about, from your perspective, rest. And last time we spoke, when we were sort of prepping, we talked about, treating it as a gift to yourself. So would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think speaking from a black man, a black Jamaican man, or born in Jamaica, living in Canada, I think Stacey touched on it, which is like shame and I think guilt is what resonates with me, right? Like, so there's an idea as a bigger black man, 6'1", 200 plus, there is this vibe that like you don't feel pain. You're not supposed to feel pain. You know what I'm saying? You're not supposed to. You're just like this ox. You know what I'm saying? And I think we see it in terms of even speaking of black men, like even like Eric Garner. You know what I'm saying, Uh, when it's this vibe of like, yeah, I think there has to be a certain selfishness in terms of myself as a black man to sort of like put rest in, because I feel like people may not afford me that. People may not say, "Yo, you deserve that."
Mhm.
So I have to, you know, be intentional about taking that rest. Um, because right now we're going to, for me, the darker months, which is November, December, it's less sunlight. I know for me that's the you know what I'm saying, and I have to like last week I booked a ticket for like it's like fully thought out or whatever. I just moved to a place like, yo, I can't go into another year without the sun and a little seawater. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? But it doesn't necessarily you have to do that route. You can start with a walk. Like I live in Scarborough, borderline Scarborough, and I try to go to Rouge Valley and go for a walk. You know, then mom's dog and go for a walk and just like just being able to like be close to nature. You know what I'm saying? Especially COVID vibe. Like I got reintroduced, or nature played a different role than before, especially nature here, because I couldn't travel. You understand what I'm saying? But working from home, my mental health was going off. And there's this vibe that you're working from home, so you feel guilty for taking rest because you're like, yo, I'm working from home, so I should.
So you're always working.
You know, for my get up
always
before
working.
I go to bed, I'm working. You know what I'm saying? And it's just like, again, you're always working. You're always working. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's intentional, because like I think as Canadians, one of the challenges that we face as Canadian Black adults is that with the research is not, you don't see, there's no research to say, yo, the impact of like mental health on Black adults. There's research on young Black children, but we're seeing, like you had a show last month or last whatever talking about suicide. You know what I'm saying? And like that's a conversation among Black, we're not talking about that. So we have to be, I have to be intentional, to not just do things for myself, but also create space for other Black men. You understand what I'm saying? So we can sort of like connect and with our own mental health, because we're not seeing that programming outside there, you know? So I'm gonna pause there.
Love that, man. So much to unpack, you know, so much to unpack it, you know, all of that you just said. But, you know, one of the things that I kind of wanna plug on is you talked about being a big Black man, 6'1", right? And then kind of knowing that, hey, you know, you need to be able to kind of figure that this is something that you should do for yourself. So if you go back, you know, Stacey, and you talked about that self was worth, right? You know, in Jamaica, they say you're worthless, right? Mm-hmm. So let's talk about that, right? Let's talk about how do you reassure, and especially as a Black man, that you are worth it. Take the time, rest up, and don't feel worthless about it. So,
I mean, Stacey, you want to take this one
yeah,
first,
sure. I thought you were referring to Brandon. Oh, absolutely. You know what? I talk a lot about the language surrounding mental health in the Black community that needs to change. It is such a strong negative language, and you know we don't. For instance, growing up in Jamaica, there was if an aunt that I can now say probably had anxiety, we would label her as her nerves are tekar or her head no good. You know what I'm saying? And so if a person is struggling with any form of mental illness or their mental health is declining, that whole stigma, the language around it, the negative language around it is then going to stop us from wanting to come forward and say this and this is happening to me, because you don't want to be labeled as lazy, you don't want to be labeled as mad, you don't want to be labeled as your head your head is taking you or anything like that. You don't want this label, and you don't want to think that you're the only one this is happening to, because we tend to think that a lot. It was in 2011 when I found out that anxiety actually affects Black people too. I thought it was only a white girl thing, because I've never heard any Black person say, you know what, I have anxiety or I'm struggling with this, right? And we've always formed it's been the language, or it's just been the topic that is always swept under the rug. It's a shame, a veil of shame that we wear. I say it's the big elephant that's sitting there in the polka dot shocking color green, right there on the couch, that we avoid for decades and decades. No, think about it, you know? And it's like there is no in between. It's either you're sane or you're gone mad. And then it's also the shame of anyone in your family that is mad, that you don't want to claim, right? So that the language around it prevents us from even talking. So even when we look at the term rest, because the language around that is so negative, it then forms into what you think about resting. A big man like Brandon, you're gonna sleep. Big man like you ever big, like, you know what I'm saying? It's always like, but no, you're a mom. You can't think about rest. You have to do this. You have to do that. So all of this ties into where our mental health is declining, or where we feel some kind of shame, or we feel some kind of guilt from resting. And it honestly took me, it was only around 2 months ago where I started to really invest into rest and to really put it as a, like implement that into a form of my self-care, because I just thought being productive was always the best thing. But like I said, think about that car that keeps going. You don't do an oil change on the car. You don't put gas in it. How's it going to keep going? At some point, it's going to break down, right?
It's gonna
So
break
I've
down, leave
heard
you
it.
alone.
Rest, yeah. So rest is something that I gift myself.
Yeah.
I gift that, and then going in knowing that my ancestors have done enough. I am resting. I am resting, and you can't talk to me, because when I get back up, or when I'm done taking my little rest, I'm back bigger and more. I have more to go for. I have more fuel to go for. So it's really important, but it's the language around it and the stigmas around it and how you feel and how we have shamed each other. And really and truly, the shame starts with the colonizers when they used to shame our enslaved ancestors. But you're lazy, call us lazy all the time. And then that trickles down into intergenerational trauma that we then feed into each other and use it as a way of motivation. And it's not motivation. But I'm going to stop. But it's true.
That intergenerational trauma is real,
Listen,
right? I
that
mean, it's self-inflicted in so many different ways, right?
listen. The whole when you think about beating, in the black community, we beat our kids. We beat the sense into them. We beat the laziness out of them. We beat the work into them. Well, who beat us first? Where did we see that example of discipline? And
Yeah,
then we carry that down, and it becomes a form of culture when it's really trauma that we're living through,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
So and that's why I want the community to know, like when you're tackling mental health. I had a conversation. I'm gonna wrap this up, Brandon. I had a conversation with a therapist that actually says to me, I don't see color, and I'm like, that's problematic. Right then and there, that is problematic, and this is why Black people, there's this whole stigma around even wanting to go seek therapy, because you cannot read from a book, or there's so many layers. So if you don't see color, you don't see racism, you don't see systemic oppression, you don't see all of that, and there's so many layers that affect us. And I said I always encourage people to look at therapists as you're going shopping. You are going shopping. You don't pick the first one if you don't vibe with them. Go shopping until you find that right person. But again, the whole therapy world mostly is so heavily Western and colonized, where it's more like to diagnose you, to give you a diagnosis or to give you a prescription, when it's never to uproot. And looking at it from a decolonized lens, you're going through uprooting and finding out what are the layers and going through the layers. But I will stop right here.
Yo, listen, that's deep, man, and I feel the passion. Brandon, I kind of see you edging to comment.
Yeah, I mean, when Stacey was talking, I was thinking about, growing up in Jamaica. I used to go to country every summer.
And listen,
Country
I
for
grew
me
up in
was
country, so don't
I grew up in
discuss.
country too, Brendan. So you better come with your tongue self.
From town, I'm going to country.
From
So hold on. So St. Mary, Robbins Bay specifically in St. Mary was where my family, my mom's side was from. And one of my favorite cousins, Jeffrey, he was loved by everyone. He was a little bit older than me, maybe 5 years older than me. Like, I don't know, I thought he was cool. You know what I'm saying? Like, we would go up, we would go into like into the woods basically, and we would make dinner and lunch just off whatever.
yes,
And for me, coming from town, that amazed me. Like, not having to use a grocery store, that amazed me, and I thought he was dope just off of that. And years down the road, like, I heard no one. I was like, "Yo, I haven't heard about Jeffrey. How's he doing?" And then it came up that he went mad, and no one was talking about him. And the story was that someone put liquor in his weed and da da da. And I learned that from an early age that, like, if you are mad, that you're disowned. It doesn't matter how loved you are, you're disowned. And growing up in Jamaica, you know, I saw mad as as the men average that was naked, that, you know, you're scared of.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? That the sun baked their skin, and they're like a specifically type of blackness that you grew up in fear of, and like the messaging that you got was like, stay away from this person. It wasn't compassion.
No.
You learn from an early age, so that there's a stigma that Stacey touched on, like it hits differently, and again, it's like, as a black man, you try to work. You know, the narrative that we tell our children is like, you have to be not just average, you have to be better. You understand what I'm saying? So for me, even the languaging to my 3 black sons has to be different. It has to be with self-care. You understand what I'm saying? So right now, there's progress reports coming up. I'm not really pushing out the marks. I want to see the high marks, but what I'm looking for is the effort. You understand what I'm saying? So it's like, let's have that conversation. And I grew up with my mom alone, and she did both jobs. So she didn't necessarily have the luxury to sort of like be attentive, work multiple jobs and be attentive. Even though I'm not together with my son's mom, we're both co-parenting. You understand? We have to communicate for our children. So for me, it's like, as I'm learning these things, I have to be spitting it out to my youths then. So I'm learning and I'm spitting at the same time. So as I'm learning about like self-care and rest, I make sure I'm telling my sons from earlier than I knew it. You understand? I'm saying? Half of this work I'm doing in my 40s that I'm not even teenager. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, the other piece around the rest piece is like specifically around black men, black fathers, and conversations that I see, like, especially in the barbershop. You understand what I'm saying? Like, a lot of us are like literally dying in isolation.
And did you
You
say in
understand what I'm saying?
isolation?
So
No, did
repeat
you say
that?
in isolation, dying in isolation?
Yeah, they're dying in
Yeah.
isolation. So what I see when I go to my barber is, yo, as soon as a man will sit down in the chair, he just opens up to his barber and just talk. And a lot of us can't necessarily, you know, afford a therapist.
Yes.
Like, so not that we can't. First, we have to get past the stigma. You understand what I'm saying? And then when we do look for a therapist, you go on, like, say, you know, a website like Psychology Today, and you get bombarded, and you see like white people or therapists that don't look like yourself. And then when you try to find a black therapist, you're booked. You understand what I'm saying? So it's like, so let you find one. You have to make sure your job has a benefit package that can, you know, at least cover something. Because again, doing one session at 150, you know what I'm saying? You need consistency. And I think there's a bigger problem in terms of healthcare, not looking at mental health as like a issue as like physical health.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? So again, there's a certain level of intentionality I feel that when we're talking about black people and working with black people, that we can't use as Stacey say, that the tools of the colonizers.
True.
You understand what I'm saying? Because it doesn't work. It
True.
doesn't work. So we have to be innovative, and we have to be intentional, and we have to be, yeah, like all of those. And we have to do. We have to do.
For sure, man. Like, if I hear it,
but that doesn't just must pay for rest. And you're constantly doing it. You know what I'm saying?
True. So if I share something with you, you know, because you both touched on a point, you know, Stacey, just in terms of, you know, hearing that person say they don't see color, or you know, right? You talking about having access to resources and sort of this whole intergenerational trauma that's been pushed down. Listen, I'm a big NFL fan, right? And I was so disturbed last week when I saw the news that came on about the settlement that was done with the race norming. You both aware of that? So
No.
no, so
Mm-hmm.
that concussion was a big thing in the NFL. So people were just sort of getting
Mm-hmm.
concussions. So when players were applying, to get help, financial help, if they had concussion problems or problems related to the mind, they would obviously test them to validate that this process. So they put a clause in this testing called race norming, where it assumed that black males, 70% of the players that play in NFL are black males. They assumed that if there was a white brain and a black brain, and they both had the same amount of damage, the white person would get compensated, the black person would not. And the
Oh.
reason for that is race norming adjustment, which assumes that the starting point for the brain function for black males is worse than it is for white males. So over that time, if they were equally sustaining the same amount of injuries, it certainly for the black person could not have been from football, right? It had to have been from birth, right? And so, like, when you think about a settlement that was just reached last week, and you think about the stigma that's associated, and then we talked about, the stigma, hey, him gone mad, and that's
Mm-hmm.
self-inflicted. But think about the stigma about us that has just been bred into how we operate and how we even think of ourselves, right? So I mean, it just sort of brought that hurt back, and I just wanted to talk through that a little bit.
That just crushed me because um I recently did a talk, and a lady reached out to me from the conversation that I had. A white woman, because I could see her photo, and she said that she loved that I talked about my journey. So I have for the audience that's watching that doesn't really know much about me, I have a personal journey with anxiety, depression, and suicidal ideation. That's why I'm so able to talk openly and freely and raise awareness and advocate for mental illness, specifically within the Black community. And she talked that she loved my talk, and she um, likened my story to a book that she's writing, a kid's book it's an animals. It's animals in the kid's book. Okay? And I'm gonna keep myself grounded. And so she referred to me to one of the characters in her book. And I wrote back nicely and I said, first, that's problematic in a sense because Black women's pain is now being similarly looked upon as an animal. And I wrote back something to be dismissive and sweet, and I said, I hope your character advocated for herself in the end. Then, and this is the first time I'm sharing this publicly, but I want to share this more often, and that's why I feel safer having conversations about mental health in the Black community in Black spaces, because the ignorance that surrounds it puts me at a place where I feel like I have to be so tense. So I said, I hope your character advocates for herself. And I left it at that. I then got another message that said, if you're doing part 2 of your documentary, so everyone, I made a documentary called The Blind Stigma, Mental Health in the Black Community. And that's what really started my career as a mental health advocate. She said, if you're doing a part 2, you should think about putting my character, feature my character.
Oof.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Mm.
And I want the audience to really understand. So when you talk about rest within the Black community and talk about the labels that have been put on Black men and Black women, that strong label that we sometimes even carry ourselves and we give ourselves and we wear it like a badge of honor and a compliment. It really isn't, because what the world sees is somebody that's less than human from them. And it's that term strips us of our humanity. And I no longer want to carry that term as a Black woman. Listen, I am soft and I'm delicate. Okay? There's no way I'm going to be wearing that bag of strength. And even if I do carry that bag of strength for me is not defined by how much I can carry. It's defined by how much I can put down. And by putting down, that's where I'm doing my healing. So when you mentioned that story about the concussion and the brain, and you're looking at the Black man's brain versus the white man's brain, it's the fact that someone can write me, and whether it's innocent or not, the fact that you can liken my story as a Black woman to a character, to an animal, That is problematic. And so when as Black women we wear this badge and we say we're strong and we're strong and we're strong Black women, it's a blatant disrespect to your mental health, blatant assault on your mental health. It strips us, it dehumanizes us, and it is not something that is a compliment. It's not, because you're really stifling and holding in your pain, and when you hold that in, that trickles down to generations to generation. We have to start breaking that. Brandon, when I learned this year, late last year, I learned that Bellevue Hospital, we're all from Jamaica, you know, Bellevue Hospital is from Jamaica. When I learned the history, do you know the history of the hospital? That was created to house our enslaved, another term that I learned this year, not to call ourselves slaves, but enslaved, because anybody signed up for this. Our enslaved ancestors, to put them in there, for those are the ones that were rebellious. Because the colonizers saw us, those who rebel and didn't want that life, they saw us as mad. They gave us the term called drapetomania. Audience, look it up. And that's why mental health in the Black community needs to be decolonized. Because from the get-go, because we didn't want it, because we rebelled, they called us crazy, and they built Bellevue Hospital to put us in there. What do you think they did with us? Fed us tea and crackers? No. We were whooped, we were beaten, we were slaughtered. So as a kid, when I grew up and I used to joke and say, "You're mad, man, you're mad. Down at Bellevue Hospital." When I learned that, let me tell you something. I wept. I felt the
Compassion.
pieces of
Compassion.
my ancestors running through my body.
Yeah.
And that's why I want our audience to know where, like, that's why when we look at mental illness with us, we can't just, it's not something to look at and diagnose. It's layers. It's layers. And if I can, and I know therapy, and I know everyone can't afford therapy, but if you can look within yourself and learn the history of where we're coming from and to your mindset, and I don't, decolonize is such a big word, it really is. But if you can try to change some of them, reclaim our narratives, reclaim it,
I,
learn to
I
reclaim it. Listen.
Yeah. Listen, I love that. And I want to kind of get practical a little bit, because, you're talking about, how do we sort of go reclaim that? And it's a layer. We're going to kind of peel it back. And then, and Brandon, you talked about, you're not looking at the high marks, you're looking at the process, right? So let's kind of get practical now and talk about, share with us, for viewers and people who are going to kind of see this later, where do you start to go for reprieve and for understanding? What are some of the resources that people could kind of start to tap into?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say, like, Stacey just dropping bars now. And this word around drapetomania, like I came across it in just reading this paper the other day talking about Black medical field, and I think that just that piece around this strength and the human, again, this, the outside knowledge or the outside verbiage is that as Black folks, men and women, that there is, like, the strength is taken up as like a humanizing factor. It's like the strength to the point of pain. You know what I'm saying? So I think just that piece around, back to your question, around resources, I feel like it's there's a certain level of intentionality that for myself that I have to do. Like, so it's like going spend time by the water, or going to go for a hike. But through Black Daddies Club, it's like creating these spaces, co-creating spaces. You know what I'm saying? Like, so whether it's barbershop sessions or the Sunday dinners, over the 50 years, it's around like different stories or going hikes with our family. You know what I'm saying? It may just me calling a brethren and say, "Yo, let's go for a walk." You know what I'm saying? So, like, as I get older, I get north of 40, I have to do what I can to sort of engage my brethren on a level to sort of create space. So, like, even cooking food on my place
Yeah.
and just having conversations to talk. You know what I'm saying? Like, these are things that I have to do intentionally to, like, for my mental health. You know what I'm saying? So even with my sons, you know, as they get older, I have to look for like different like one-on-one time. So like when I'm driving one to work, you know, one works at Canada's Wonder. So that drive to and from, that's like a conversation. You know what I'm saying? Or my youngest son, he has track practice 3 times a week. That's one-on-one conversation that he and I have. That's like, for me, that's also helping my own mental health. You understand? Because just in that engagement, I feel like, you know, a cycle or yeah, in the cycle and just in terms of creating this positive vibe with my so and then I think there's a selfishness again. It's like whether it's like again, you know, take a trip, if it's a solo trip, or you know what I'm saying, like do what I can to kind of like, you know, take care of myself, take care of other folks.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. I love that, and you know, it's kind of so revealing as you keep talking through that. And we go back to the start of this conversation. We're talking about the different types of rest. You just sort of touched on a few of those, right? You know, exploring.
Yeah.
Stacey Ann, talk to me.
Mm-hmm. Would you like? Would you want me to talk about the different forms of rest, or how
Yeah,
my?
no, I want you to talk about like, you know, practical resources. Like I know you talked about your documentary and you're doing a bunch of
Yeah.
work in that space, right?
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah.
let's get practical, direct people, and be selfish too, and kind of say, listen, you know, come to me. I got some resources.
Yeah, of course. Anytime somebody, every time I finish a talk or I'm doing a talk, I say, feel free to slide into my inbox because I know sometimes people want to share something, but maybe not want to share that they're experiencing something publicly. So I say my inbox is always open. I can definitely share resources within the GTA, especially of where to go if you're seeking help, you know. And I also definitely implement a lot of self-care. So I love that Brandon does to come over and we can cook. You know, because thinking about it, you're taking back to the old school when you and your cousin going to the bush. You know, my dad they used to call it run a boat.
And a
You know, they get
boat.
the wood fire and everything and make the spoon drop dumpling where you don't have time to knead it. Like, you know, some tin
Chat,
mackerel.
chat
That's like,
bug, chat bug.
listen, that's some soul food, you know? One of my favorite things personally to do, I go for solo drives, you know, and sometimes when I get back home, I'll sit in the car for like 10 minutes. Like, I don't think people know the power that holds in that little moments in the car. I definitely try to do walks as much as I can, drink water. I adopt plants. I love when I see when people have like these plants in the background and you don't know how much the oxygen that's breathing in. And some plants are really good for anxiety. I can show you a list of what plants to get. So I love to adopt plants. I journal a lot too. And because I struggle personally with anxiety, I'm still going through it. I like to write a lot of things down because there's always a lot of thoughts racing through my head. So I like to journal a lot and just keep a journal. I mute, block, and delete on social media because sometimes it honestly can trigger with your mental health. It's a form of self-care. And I think sometimes people feel like they need to keep people around or need to keep a certain relationship or a tie around because so and so when it's killing you on the inside. And you don't need to do that. I love the fact that when we talk about being selfish, but being selfish is really being selfish because you can't pour from an empty cup.
Mm,
And I remember I had a
perfect.
conversation with a mom, and this was like my baby is 2, so this was about a year ago, and I talked about how important it is for my mental health, and that I will put that first. And she said she didn't understand. I said, well, I want to be the best for my baby and for my child, so I have to take care of my mental health because our parents were amazing in a sense that they gave us the roof over our head, clothes on our back, shoes, food, and all of that stuff, and provided for our education. But sometimes we lack the emotional security and the emotional support. And moving in now as a mom, I don't want to say that publicly because my dad gave me that, but like I didn't get it safe from my mom. So moving in, I want to make sure that I do have that. for my daughter. She can come and she can talk to me about anything, her struggles, and I won't dismiss it as like, you have a roof over your head, you have clothes on your back, you have cell phone, why you need to be depressed or why you need to
Exactly.
feel a certain way, right?
You don't have
So,
nothing to
so
worry about,
I'm
right? They tell you don't have nothing to worry about. Oh, you're freezing up. Um, hey, listen.
There
So
was a question there by our brother Brandon in the
yeah, and I believe that the question was, do we feel that as Black people, that we're being misdiagnosed for mental health? I believe that was a
I
question,
believe
right?
so. I
Yeah.
believe so. I've heard so many parents talk about their kids being labeled as ADD or ADHD, and sometimes it's so quick to diagnose because no one is looking at the root. No one is looking at the environment that you're in. No one is looking all of that. It's a westernized way, and it's just reading from a book. And I'm sorry, but you can't do that because sometimes we don't even know what's wrong. We racism is so like normal to us, like we drink water, we go to the stores where we're being profiled. We That's so normal to us. But when as a therapist, if you can unlock certain things, we don't even know that it's a problem because it's become so normalized. So a therapist that is looking at therapy through the lens of decolonization can root those things. So I'm not a therapist yet, but if I can share and if I can help my community on little keys that they can utilize to open up doors that were locked that they didn't know, I'm definitely going to educate. When I learn, I'm giving that because as I climb, I'm lifting. I lift as I climb, right?
Yeah, for sure. So listen. So there's this aspect around, and we talked about this, the silent killer aspect around the chat my business, right? And as you talk about the different forms of anxiety, like you kind of feel as if it's a norm in the Black community for people to be anxious about not talking because they don't want to share because people are going to chat them business. So how do you address that silent killer? And I know we're up against time, so I
Mhm.
want to hear from both of you on this.
Brandon, do you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
yeah, you can go ahead. I mean, yeah, you go ahead.
Um, One of the things I remember when I was struggling with suicidal ideations, and I would tell my dad that, I don't like the way I'm feeling. I don't like these thoughts. And my dad will tell me, drink some tea, read your Bible, and pray. We all know those remedies, right? And I was drinking tea after tea after tea, praying, and reading my Bible, and nothing. And I asked my dad 3 times, and the third time he said, since you like to chat so much, how about you tell your business to strangers? Because his fear was if I tell somebody, then somebody's going to tell another person, then it's going to go back down to Jamaica that he has failed as a parent and that he is raising a mad daughter. Right. So when we look at it, I do understand the sense of where people feel like they want to keep their business to themselves. And I'm not saying to go on social media and share everything, but find somebody that you can trust. It may be a friend, it may be a colleague, it may be your pastor. Find somebody that you can trust, but bottling it in, it festers and it grows. Because before I sought therapy, I used strangers as my therapist. It was my way of getting the load off of my back of my struggles that I was going through. And the beauty about strangers, the reason why my dad told me, it was a really ignorant statement that he made, but it saved my life, was that they don't really know me after. It's just a beautiful exchange, right? So I would never say to anyone to just keep it all in. Even if you have a book or a journal, you can write it out. Even if it's a pen pal, somebody that you don't even know, somebody on your Instagram that you built up a relationship with, but you have to let it out. But make sure you find a place where you feel safe. It's really important that you feel safe with that person, and a place. When I say safe, doesn't necessarily mean a place. It could be a person, right? Somebody that you feel safe with, then you can start sharing, right? But I'm telling you this as somebody that was once suicidal. When you open up and you share even a snippet of what you're going through, it feels like 10 elephants come off of your back.
True,
I'm telling
true,
you.
true. Love that. Brandon, love to hear your perspective, especially from, you know, a Black Daddies Club perspective, that support mechanism.
Yeah, I think, you know, this idea of unmasking um, is important. It's been important for myself, I think, since 2015. And in 2015, I went to this on conference in Portugal, and you know, during the daytime, you know, we'd be talking about the on conference stuff that we went for, but at the nighttime, we would like connect for like a drink or whatever. And for all you guys who've been to conferences, the best conversations for me take place having a smoke or having a coffee or having a drink at the bar at the end of the day. You know what I'm saying? Because you're connecting with people. And I started to share certain things with people, with strangers, that I wouldn't share with people here in Toronto. And I think for me, because you know, there was this not wanting to look a certain way, and again having game and whatever. But I stayed that I didn't know these folks. And on the fourth day of this conference, I started to bawl. I just started to cry. I couldn't stop crying. And I realized the next day, you know, some friends who I met went to the beach, and I went with them. I said, you know, forget the conference that day. I needed that. And I realized that, like, my body knew the concept. You understand what I'm saying? My body knew, it was like, I can't the lying, I can't the suppressing. It needed a place to get out. You understand what I'm saying? So for me, it was important to start to, like, again, focus on through Black Daddies Club, creating spaces where I can connect with other Black men, honestly. Because one of the things, you know, initially, and I still do, but I, you know, do a lot of events where it was unisex, right? And one of the things I noticed, and I'm guilty of this, in a barbershop, when it's a unisex conversation, men could be having some real conversation, and then a good-looking woman comes into the shop, and then men switch up. You know what I'm saying? Like, the conversation then is a performance. You're trying to engage, you're trying to, like, you know, like a peacock, you're trying to show your colors. And I think we lose something in that. We lose something in the performance. We lose something in putting on the mask. Because I feel like, well, you know, I get mentioned before, like, we had the first Sunday dinner this Sunday. And what I noticed in the last is it's only for Black identified men. It doesn't matter if you're straight, trans, blind, as long as, you know, you identify as Black, it's open. And there's something about this fact, Black men being in dialogue with each other. For me, I feel it's the fullest I feel when I come out a session, or when I'm in a session and another man is talking and I don't have to talk. He's just saying some shit that I resonates with
You
me.
think it?
And that's so much different in spaces that I pick up. You know, like when I'm in school, I'm usually the only Black guy in my class. When I'm at my job, I'm usually the only Black guy in my position at my job. You understand what I'm saying? So whenever I speak or say something real or unmasked, then it's a gamble. And as Black men, as Black people, there's a gambling you have to be around. When do I unmask? Because we know that it's not always safe to unmask.
Yeah, could be detrimental. So could be detrimental for sure.
It could be, you know, you think about Sandra Bland, you think about, you know, you show anger, and that's liable to get you killed from police or in the mental health system. You understand what I'm saying? So, you know, these places that are supposed to protect us, when we unmask because of fear, because of dehumanizing, because we're so strong, you're unhumanly strong, then we have rights to choke you down. 6 people choke down 1 Black man for a cigarette. Eric Garner. You understand what I'm saying? So it's like there's a constant balance we have to do just to get up. Walk through our house every day. There's a constant balance that we have to do.
True.
To get back home safely.
True. So hey, listen, like, it almost feels like the time went like this. You know?
I know.
Yeah, like time done. But listen, I want to just kind of, you know, wrap up. rest, gift it to yourself. Last words from you, Brandon, and then we go to the lady.
Yo, I mean, I think this is a beautiful day to end the day. Like, my body feels live. I learned a lot. It was beautiful to get that from both you guys talking about country and like that holds a special place in my heart right now. I want to go to the barbershop after this to practice a little self care. So I think so I'm in a good place. So thank you
Do
both.
you. Appreciate it, bro. Love it.
Yeah, I'm just gonna leave the audience with this thing. Remember, strength is never how much you can carry, but what you choose to put down. And while Brandon is gonna go to the barber shop, I am making some ackee and saltfish for dinner, and I'm looking forward to that.
Could we call Uber Eats?
Listen,
Hey.
the next time we get together and talk, we have to have some tin mackerel, okay?
All right, all right. I love that. Listen, I appreciate you both coming on. You know, our brothers who care. Mental health is one of our pillars, but we're all about the process of doing three things, and three things that we hold dearly to our heart: learning, sharing, and acting. And if we do that, and we keep ourselves responsible, and we engage our friends, our family, and our community, then we will start to change our conversation. We'll start to ignite and normalize the conversation about mental health and feel comfortable talking about it. So thank you so much for doing this. Appreciate you.
Thank you
All
both,
right,
man.
Thank
cool.
you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.